Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to change the world one starfish or one person at a time. Together we can change the world if we work together. Make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share, all the stuff. I'm excited for our guest today, Dave Greene. He's actually owns a couple CrossFit. I don't know if they're all CrossFit gyms. He owns a couple gyms. He's in a wellness coach, fitness coach, husband, father, actually runs 4 businesses. Just did part of a World Masters Jiu-Jitsu competition, which is apparently very hard to get into, and I can imagine that it is. So welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So he's been in, so you've been in the gym and the fitness and all of that kind of industry for about 10 years. Tell us what kind of got you into that and what you did before.
Oh, yeah, it's interesting. So 10 years. I've owned my first brick and mortar for about 8.5 years. Prior to that, I was in construction. I was a project manager for a specialties finishes contractor. Very, very high-end decorative paint and ornamental plaster work. We worked internationally, actually, but most of the work was, in the U.S. So the company was based out of Manhattan, and the type of work is like we've painted almost every theater in Manhattan. I worked on 7 state capitals. When I quit, I was working on Carnegie Hall, the Kennedy Center in DC, and New York City Hall. Different scopes of work in each of those projects. But anybody that's been in the field of project management, I think one of my favorite quotes that kind of summed that up was like managing unrealistic expectations. And particularly when you're dealing with like high end, you can't mess up these finishes. There is no redo. I'm talking like 22 karat gold leaf. Like you can't just like touch that up. You gotta like redo the entire surface, which can be very costly, materials and labors wise. But anyway, disenchanted with the work. It was very rewarding. On the one hand, is we were like rebuilding the cultural fabric of America, and I really like buy into that and was vested in that. But it was just a lot of stress. I was really depressed, drinking a lot, couldn't sustain relationships because I was on the road all the time. And for about 6 years, like one of my buddies I worked with was like, "Oh, you should go do CrossFit." And, I think I was about 32 when I finally pulled the trigger, 33. And it kind of changed my life. I remembered how I felt being an athlete, and I played intercollegiate club level lacrosse in college. I played sports, growing up, high school, all tons of sports. So like I felt great about myself, but then when you're in that space, like you start to see people transform. And for me, it was mostly like women. Like there were ladies in their late 20s and their 30s, and this was in New York at the time, in Jersey City. It's like a woman comes in and does like the first pull-up ever in her life, and you just kind of see the lights go on, like the realm of possibility just like expand, because historically not a lot of ladies do pull-ups, right? Typically. Yeah, that's a big generalization, but it holds most of the time anyway. And then they become more capable, and I was like, wow, like this is like tremendous. So long story short, I quit my job. I actually divorced my ex-wife, moved back home to Chicago, opened my gym, and I started living in the attic of my buddy's house. He was also recently divorced, in an unheated garage in the Chicago suburbs, like right outside the Chicago city limits. So just think like I had clients coming to me 5 a.m. I'd have like a space heater on barbells and kettlebells and dumbbells and stuff, trying to warm them up. And that's how I got my start. Yeah.
Wow. So there's a lot of places there to go into. Yeah. Why was it so transformational for you to get into CrossFit and get back into it in the first place? Like what did it start to switch? And then, you said you went through a bunch of changes at the same time. How did you work yourself through that mentally? And there's a few things here. You go where we want. How did you get applied to a place like that?
Yeah. There's a lot there. So let's say, one of the things for me was like that, like, and I know in my heart, I often say like, I believe this, but I know it. It's like, there's this, catalyst for improving your life that happens with physical exertion. And I think a lot of people know this, and they manifest it through like whatever, doing a CrossFit workout. Like I started doing jujitsu 18 months ago, like you're alluding, and that's been a huge catalyst for me for a lot of things. But like I remember going to CrossFit workouts before I coached, and I would be in the gym 5:30 in the morning because I had to be at construction sites at like 6:30 or 7. And it's like, I'd go in and it's like, I did a, whatever, 300-pound deadlift this morning. And I'm like I had achieved something for myself. And I wasn't like as articulate about it now that I've studied it a little bit more and practice it. But I was like, oh, I did this challenge and I did something for myself. Now the rest of the day isn't going to be as hard. Right. Yeah. So that was the thing for me. It's like, oh, well, work is less stressful because I did something for me first thing in the morning. And there are a lot of people that talk about the morning ritual, and I've read, millions of books, but like there's a lot of people that talk about like doing that first thing in the morning. So that was a big thing for me. The cascade changes. So I was 38 when I quit my job, and I was heir apparent to take over a 7-figure income and run the company. And I left a well over 6-figure income, divorced my ex-wife, moved back home to Chicago. So I was in this like midlife free fall. It's like all, moving across the country. These are like all the things they say are the most stressful things you can do in your life, like divorce, leave a career, move, I didn't have any parents die like that, but yeah, there was a lot of, I don't know if imposter syndrome isn't the word, but there was a lot of just like anxiety and angst, like, am I doing the right thing? And depression. Like my marriage was not good. And we were both at fault, but she had a lot of issues. She was, anyway, but I felt like a failure, even though that marriage was doomed to fail. I felt like a failure, like I had somehow failed as a man, because I always wanted to be married, wanted to be a husband, wanted to be a father. So I struggled with a lot of those things. And then the last part, like, how do I attract clients to a garage, an unheated garage in the winter in Chicago? Yeah. I think it has to, something about my character is like, I do have a lot of confidence, and I feel like I can do things well if I put my mind, set my mind to it and really work hard. And a lot of it is a little bit of fake it till you can make it, but I felt like I had the best services. I felt like I was a phenomenal coach. I certainly cared very deeply and believed in what I was doing. And I remember like my membership rates were like higher than regular brick and mortar, like CrossFits in the area. And people would say, like, scoff at them at times, like, how can you charge? I think it was like $150 a month at the time. But a result of that, and this is that the other gyms around me all raised their prices, that's a whole nother conversation. I help mentor some gym owners and coaches, and how do you set your price? Well, it's like, well, charge what you're worth, and don't value seek. Don't be the cheapest guy on the block. That's just a race to the bottom. Anyway, but I cared very deeply. And that was, and I think that showed.
And where did you reach out to people? Did you just go out and talk to people? Did you put an ad? How did you start to build your business?
A lot of it was friends. I started to reach out to family and friends. Like one of my longest running clients was my sister, and she actually is my general manager for my brick and mortar now. But she had a background in teaching. She was teaching Spanish at the junior high level, and actually she was out of that role. She was teaching online, and I mean, this is a decade ago, and people don't realize how much it was in its online teaching was in its infancy, even just 10 years ago. And then I had friends, and there weren't a lot. The first year or so, I think I had about, a dozen clients. And when I drove Uber, so when people would cancel on me, I was like, well, I got to go make a few bucks. I'd get in my car and go drive around for a couple hours. And I would also was looking for a brick and mortar, it's trying to find a good location to move, to actually establish my business. And that took, about a year. And, asking my current wife to marry me you know, planning for, that marriage, and that wedding and all that, because that all happened within, that's a whole nother story, which is
Just like that, we could go down like a lot of trails here.
Yeah, well, I was sitting in a bar one Saturday night. I was, for all intents and purposes, separated from my ex. I had the movers set to move back to Chicago. So it's just Saturday night. I'm like, I'm on the couch. My ex was in the bedroom for like 9 months. And I'm like, I just can't sit here anymore. So I'm like, I'm going down to the bar. I knew the bartender. I was drinking a lot, pretty well served that evening. And in walked my current wife. And I was like literally sitting at the bar going, okay, I'm getting divorced. I'm going to focus on my business. I'm not going to, date anyone for like a year. And in walks my current wife. And so we had like this clandestine dating thing in Jersey City where we lived, which is not a huge town, but like we would go out for dinner and stuff while I'm waiting to move to Chicago. And I would always be looking over my shoulder thinking my now ex-wife would be like coming in and it's like, am I going to give her grounds for something in the divorce?
Right.
But anyway, yeah. So yeah, and that's a whole nother conversation, but lovely. Yeah.
That's hilarious. So you said you used to, so a couple of things I want to that I think listeners will get some value from. So you mentioned that you had a lot of confidence, and you also mentioned, let's just go down that road for now. So you mentioned you had a lot of confidence in yourself. Where did that come from? And how do you think someone can develop that?
Yeah, it's something I spent a lot of time thinking about. Like it may have developed when I was very young. Like my mom went through a divorce and she got remarried, within a span of a few years. And my stepfather has been with us since he actually recently passed, but he was with us since I was about 5. I think they got married when I was 7 or 8. And but my mom and dad got divorced. I was 2 or 3. And I remember being like really young, and my mom was like, "You're the man of the house," like, and it might have been 5, but like that resonated with me. I was like, "Oh, there's this sense of responsibility," and as much as a 5 or 6-year-old or however old I was, like, can make that real. It was like real to me, and I'm not the dumbest guy in the room. I've always done pretty well with my grades, and I've always been, pretty athletically, gifted. Wasn't a D1 athlete or anything, but I was pretty good at sports. And so I think like the confidence comes from that. But I my entire life, I believed like I can do anything I set my mind to. I just need to practice or exercise or learn about it or whatever. But that's not just me, by the way. Like I believe anybody can do that. And that's one of the hardest things as a coach is like, I'm trying to help people and like, they don't realize it. They don't have that mentality. And it's like, how do I get them to understand that they are capable of so many things, if not anything, as long as they set their mind to it. So I think it comes from being young, or in my youth and maybe from my mother, but, yeah, I think that's a part of it. Maybe it was just like my dad left and I had to do this. Like I couldn't fail, so I think that's it. Did I answer all of your question? Yeah.
So how, you said that's something you try to install in some of your people you're coaching. What do you find helps them, build that confidence in themselves? What are some tips that you might be able to give someone that can help them build that confidence if they weren't installed at a young age?
It's one of the biggest challenges, I think, because people, whatever road you're on, like you're business owner, entrepreneur, parent, spouse, relationships, or your health and wellness, like people think that, well, there's a couple of things. Like they think that like drastic, huge, monumental change needs to happen. It needs to happen fast. And, if we stick in the health and like wellness space, it's like, okay, you're 40 years old, you've never exercised, your diet needs improvement, to put it mildly. You never take time to work on yourself. And like here you come into the gym. Okay, I'm going to work out 6 days a week. I'm going to quit drinking, quit smoking. I'm going to change my diet. Like, it's like, no, like you cannot do all of these things. And so like there's this huge, like mountain of change that they try to enact all at the same time. And they're setting themselves up for failure, right? Because like we can't win at all of these things. And then I guess that's the other side of it is that like when people quote unquote fail at something, they think that's the end. They become a victim, and it's like, oh, I was gonna, maintain this diet. It's my son's 3-year-old birthday today. I ate some cake. We had a party, had a couple beers, and it's like, oh, I failed. I wasn't on my diet. It's like, no, this is life. It's not that you do this every single day, but it's a real event, and you want to celebrate. You're going to do some of these things, and because you failed that day, there's this cascade into like, well, now I'm not going to work out tomorrow. I drank last night, yesterday, so yeah, I'm going to drink again today, and the diet's out, like whatever. So they take on a victim mentality, and then they also don't understand that failure is an integral part of success. So rather than taking that, oh, like whatever, I went out with the buddies and had a beer, and like learning from that process and implementing the lesson into the next day, that they just take it as a failure, and they're like, oh, I'm done, So I hope I'm being articulate.
Yeah,
there's a lot there.
Yeah.
And I think that lesson carries over into all parts of your life, like whatever, dealing with my wife, and there's a problem, and like, did I talk about it, or did I just let it fester, or or she had a request from me and I was in a bad mood and just snapped at her, or my kids, right? Like, oh, I'm tired, and I barked at my son instead of like trying to be constructive in the conversation. It's like, well, does that make me a horrible husband and father, or did I just have a bad day? And
right.
Did I learn from the interaction, and can I improve on that tomorrow? And so many people, I think, just shut it down as soon as failure happens, or as soon as a roadblock or an obstacle or some type of hardship comes in. And it's really hard to be successful in life, Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think listeners probably got a lot of value from that. If you have one of those days that's a little off, it's okay. Just like pick yourself back up and go back to it the next day. I think that was like my biggest takeaway from that. And something else that you touched on earlier that I'd like to touch on. You said, when you were going through some of the changes, you used to drink a lot. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that was kind of maybe not a problem, but maybe something in your life, the way you said it. Is that something you worked through, and how did you get through? Because I know a lot of people have addictions in their life of all different types, and it can actually be as simple as something I've had to work through, which was workaholism. But like everyone has addictions in their life to a degree, I think, and how to work through them. So I'm just curious, what helped you kind of, get out of that?
Well, it's interesting. I'm 46 now, and like my relationship with alcohol has gone through many different phases, and I spent a lot of time reflecting on my youth, and like I remember, not like being a teenager and like drinking like whiskey with my grandma on Christmas morning. And like, that was a point of pride for me when I was like 18. I was like, I had Irish whiskey at, 8 a.m. at my grandma's house for Christmas, and like now looking back, it's like so much of my life, my social interactions and in my teenage and college years, and even probably well into my 30s, like just focused on alcohol. It's like, where are we going to drink? Well, we're going to this bar. Where's the party at? Those sorts of things. And it's like, and like looking back at that, like how many of those instances or those moments, like were like really impactful, like as a 46-year-old, like I thought it was really important as a teenager to go be social and do these things at college and whatnot. But now like looking back, it's like, this is garbage moments. So, I don't know if I'm an alcoholic, but like there were when I was working construction on the road for like literally 6 years straight, like I didn't unpack suitcases. I'd be in this town for 3 months, that town for 3 weeks, that town for 2 months. Like I was really, really depressed. And like I did want to be a husband, I did want to be a father, and here I am, in my late 20s, getting into my 30s, and like I couldn't maintain a relationship. So I spent a lot of time drinking, and like I could drink a whole bottle of whiskey or scotch or whatever, and just a double-edged sword for me is that like I come from a long line of kind of functional alcoholics. Like I'm missing the enzyme. I never get hangovers, so like I would get like alcohol poisoning before I get a hangover, and it's just like I never get sick. I never have to vomit unless I've consumed so much alcohol that I just I mean, I'm literally talking about like 2 bottles of booze. like I have to purge my system. So now, and it never really kept me from like performing at least decently well at my job,
Right.
So it wasn't like,
Didn't see a problem.
yeah, right. Yeah, and, so how I got past it, like, well, I still drink, but it's not like, every day. It's a lot more social. Like I did 75 hard for the first time last year. And I've done other diet, like kind of restrictive diet type things also, where it's like, okay, no alcohol for a month, and I can do that. Like I've never had a real problem with that. It's just, I still have the triggers, and I cope with alcohol. It's like stressful day. Well, I need to have a beer or whatever at the end of the day. Oh, and the other thing is, and I talk with my clients about this in my health and fitness space also, is like, it was a great day, like we crushed it. We 10 new members today. Like, I'm going to go have a beer. It's like, well, is that actually a reward, or is that keeping you from your goals? So I spent a lot of time thinking about that. And it's not to say I'm not going to have now my kind of drink of choice is a nice glass of bourbon or a glass of wine, like I'll still have that at the end of the day, but it's certainly not every day. One of the big things, I guess, to answer your question, how I do that is like I focus on a task, right? So, like jujitsu, I started 18 months ago, and I was like, oh, like this is something I wanted to do. My 4-year-old is in it with me. He's now 5. We've been doing it for 19 months basically now, and so like, and this is a big thing for me too. Is like I'm jumping over the place, but like I like brewery shirts, right? And like your identity, is a huge thing people get caught up with, and it becomes a hindrance. It can be very crippling. It's like if my wife dies tomorrow or my sons, some tragic things happen. It's like if I only identify as a father, like I won't be able to get past that, or a husband, and like I could be shell for the rest of my life. But I have all these brewery shirts, and I'm like, well, this is the guy I identify. It's like, I'm the guy that knows the IPAs, and I joke with some of my members about this too. It's like, hey, bro, like, do you want your sons to recognize you as the guy that knows all the IPAs within 20 miles? Or do you want to be the dad who, went to World Masters, had the blue belt in jiu-jitsu? So like I put a target in front of myself to work towards, and like drinking definitely detracts from that target. So like we talked about the beginning of the show, I just went to World Masters. I really didn't have a lot of business being there. We're like, there are people much more experienced than I lost in the first round. I went knowing that I may fail, but like I had to put my hat in the ring, and I had to train. I had to be dedicated enough to work out consistently, do my jiu-jitsu training, have my diet on point, make weight, all those things. So to identify how I want to be for my sons and my wife, and myself, not necessarily in that order. And then like I put tasks in front of me, like I'm going to go do this impossible thing. Like nobody else from my jiu-jitsu school went to World Masters, and they're seniors there that they have more tenure than me for sure. Higher ranking belts, been around a lot longer. Like, why am I the only one that went to World Masters, from my school?
Right.
And I don't know. It's I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Finding a thing of who do you want to be known for, is really important, and realizing, when there is maybe not it's, I used to drink a lot, too. I mean, I'm Irish, and so a very similar sounding thing. And then when I got diagnosed with MS, I just can't walk and drink. So I had to quit it. And it was hard for me to quit it for a while, because it was my identity. I could outdrink anyone, and I could, compete with everybody on that one. And, it's funny, after 4 years now, I'm good. I'll never probably drink again. So,
go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it's one of the funniest things too. Like, I just saw a post on my Facebook feed yesterday about this, and it's a huge struggle for my clients too. It's like identity and the peers, like I can outdrink anyone. It's like right. Those are the people you hang out with. Like you're never going to live a better life if like you're trying to quit drinking, trying to improve your diet. And every time you go hang out, it's like, well, here comes old boy with, 2 cases of beer in a bottle. And like, this is how I'm going to spend every Friday, Saturday, or the group of soccer parents, we're all sitting there drinking during or the T-ball games,
That's a really good point. Who you're hanging out with and what makes you want to compete like that. So in getting down that trail, associations, has that been something, what has happened for you from going from, your past life, I'm going to say, to your present life, and kind of what you're looking at your future life? How has that influenced you, and what are your thoughts on associations?
Well, I kind of drive my wife nuts because I don't do small talk. I want to have conversations with people. I want to know what you're thinking. I want to know, where you're from. If and I credit my grandfather for this a lot. He was a lawyer at Yale. He got his law degree from NYU. And I remember being young, and he would argue with a debate with us, and in the middle of the debate, he would switch sides and make you argue the opposite point. And so, it's a real tragedy, I think, in this day and age where you're like, well, if this is like one of the most offensive things you could say to somebody is, well, that's interesting. You think that way. Like, why do you believe that? They're like, right. Substantiate your point, please. Cite something and whatever. I'm lost here, but association. Yeah, association. So I don't do small talk, and when I'm hanging out with the dads when I'm dropping my kids off, it's you're just talking to me about the shows, that you're like, oh, what'd you binge on Netflix? I'll be polite, but it's I want to talk about real things that I think that have impact, and that the quote or whatever, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most with. I take that to heart. So I want to find people that are more successful than me, in any capacity. And maybe that's the reason why I want to talk to people. It's if you're accepting complacency or mediocrity, I don't think you have a lot to offer. And I'm not saying I'm this wildly successful person, but I want to be successful, and whatever that means. And I want to find people that will help lift me up. And I'm dedicated to lifting other people up. I mean, my whole business is about that. It's a business. I want to make a profit, but it's all based on helping people. How can I help you improve your life? And so it's tough. I'm just thinking about conversations I have with so many of my clients where they're like, hey, I'm talking about, ladies that need to lose 100 pounds, and pushing 300 pounds, well over 250, dudes that are over 300 pounds and 50% body fat and need to make change in their life. And well, this is going to be hard. I'm going to have to make new friends. And I'm like, yeah, if your friends aren't supporting you, some of these things.
Now, you found on the friends thing, I'm curious, when you went from working out of a good corporate job and then living one place and moving another and starting a gym, did you have a lot of, one of the things I hear a lot of people that, I don't want to lose my friends, kind of like what you're saying some of your clients say. Did you find you lost them, or did they just kind of fade out because you went down a different trajectory?
Well, my career friends, there was a geographical shift, right? I moved from New York back to Chicago. So I had online friends, but the vast majority of my friends were my CrossFit buddies. And I used to say this a lot. It's the people that I missed the most. It wasn't the people I worked with. It was my CrossFit buddies. And they actually, a lot of them came out and visited me and came to my second marriage and things like that. But so they didn't necessarily fade out. There was a geographical shift, and some of them got married, have kids, and they just got busy. But there are a lot of people, and I used to be this, also loyal. This is my high school buddy. I've known this guy
ever since we were 10.
Yeah, and it's well, what's your high school buddy contributing to your life right now? He's just the guy that brings the couple cases of beer every weekend, or goes and meets you at the brewery, or, is he the guy that's helping you succeed in your business, in your relationships? Is he the one that's calling you out when you're failing? Or is he the one that's there are a lot of ladies that do this. I hate to make generalizations, but it's oh, you look beautiful. It's no, that dress looks like crap. They like, what do you wear? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it seems trivial, but like, there's so many people that just like won't call you out and push you forward. And so, anyway, like switching back to the loyalty thing, I guess, I did some hard thinking, and I had some clients initially that were old high school buddies, and it's like every time you come by, it's just drama, and like you've been like really, really good friend to me for like decades, but I can't be with you anymore. Like I can't be around you. And those are some really hard.
Just say, did you actually have those actual conversations?
Yeah, there's one person I'm thinking of in particular. He was like one of my best buddies for.
How did it go?
It was hard. Like he was going through a lot of personal stuff, and it was manifesting in his life in a very negative way. And I tried to support him for many, many months, be his friend, supporting, and then like it just was spiraling way up. And I was like, I can't have you around me, and I literally had that conversation. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but it was tough because I was like, this guy had been there for me for a lot of things, and I'd been there for him for a lot of things. But in hindsight, it was best for me,
and maybe for him too.
Yeah, maybe.
Like,
and it sounds selfish. Yeah, it sounds selfish, but I think that it's not bad to protect yourself. You have to do that, and you have to do some hard analysis sometimes, and say I need to take care of me first, and my core unit, my family, before I need to worry about other things, even if that's extended family, like uncle or cousin or sister, maybe, or brother or whatever. It's like, yeah, it's tough. It's tough, and it weighs on me to this day. But I know I made the right decision.
Yeah, you did for your family. That's so cool. Well, I know we could go on for a long time, but I like to keep these short and sweet because I get attention span deficiency. But I'm sure we'll have you on again. And we touched a lot of stuff for our listeners. I'm really excited, learning about associations, completely uprooting your life and building a new business, building confidence, how to do that, how to build some confidence in your life. How, your past doesn't define you, your present doesn't define you. You can recreate your whole life whenever you basically want to, which is what you've done, which is really, really cool. And on that constant path of self-improvement. Before wrapping up, I always ask 3 final questions. And then anything that we didn't touch on that, we can leave our listeners with. So first final question is, we always talk about finding our purpose. People are always asking, how do you do that? So if someone says, how do you find your purpose? What's one sentence that you would say that could help them find their purpose?
That's tough. I talk a lot with my staff about finding the thing that has the least dissonance in your life. And we have to look at your daily tasks and things like that. And if you are doing something, you're like, it stresses me. I hate doing this. I think one of the biggest things you can do is move away from that. And if you're an employee and your boss or whoever is saying you have to do this, you need to have those conversations. Listen, boss, I will do this, but this really excites me, or at least this is such a stressor, mental sink for me. I need to move away from it. And even just starting to analyze those sorts of things, I think moves the needle in the right direction. I've always been really, really excited to help people. So I knew that it was something I had to do. And in my previous career, I felt like I was helping people indirectly, through rebuilding some of the cultural monuments of the country. There was a real purpose in that, and that resonated with me. And now it's a lot more intimate. I'm going to help you live your best life through exercise. But moving away from the things that cause dissonance, I think, is one of a big step. It's okay to say no and move away. So, okay, good. Question 1. All right.
Number 2, and I'm sure you have more than one, but what one comes to mind? What's your favorite quote and why?
Yeah, I am an avid reader, and that is tough. It's really, really tough. I've read a lot of the Stoics, and I used to read the Daily Stoic every day, so there's a lot of quotes there. But the thing that just popped into my head, so maybe I'll stick with that, is City Lights Bookstore in San Francisco has a quote over one of the stairwells there. It says like, having more books than you can ever possibly read is just the mind reaching for the infinite, or something like that. And that's one. The other one, and this is a little business oriented, is never cease your pursuit to be qualified for the position that you hold. Right? Which
Well, do your best.
Yeah, always be learning. Like, in the coaching space, like, you don't just get a certification or a degree and sit there. Like, you have to read the current trends, whether they're, journal articles, fitness articles, or they're, or the new cert. Things are always shifting. And I think that's true anywhere. Like, never just sit there and be complacent. Like, you got to keep moving. So there's two.
Third question is, what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
Oh man. I don't know. You stumped me on that one. I want people, I want to be a good man. I want to be a good human being. And I hope that that's reflected. Here's a good dude.
I love it. That's so cool. Like I said, wrapping up, is there anything, if you run into someone at the coffee shop and they're like, hey, David, listen to the podcast, that was awesome. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you just think, really, really impactful that our listeners need to hear?
Oh man, it's tough. I think there's so much to living a better life, becoming a better self. We could talk about this for days. We're here for a half an hour, and it is just like the tip of the iceberg. But like, don't give up, right? Like, constantly find something to make yourself 1% better every single day. It doesn't, change doesn't have to be monumental. It's like the little thing, like, oh, well, I'm going to do less of that tomorrow, or I'm going to do a little bit more of that tomorrow, or, I snapped at my wife. Like, okay, what can I do to not do that? Or snapped at my boys, or, or whatever. Like, just one little thing every single day is all it takes. I mean, I really think that puts you in the top, 1%, honestly, is like just that little tiny thing you can find to make yourself better. When you stop finding that thing, well, now we've become complacent, and you're not going to have a better life at the very least, right? So I think that's it.
That's awesome. I love it. As always, guys, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and let's go out there. We can change one life at a time, one starfish at a time, and together we can change the world. All of Dave's information will be in the show notes. Make sure to follow him, reach out if you have any questions, all of that kind of stuff. Thank you so much for being on the show, Dave. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I had a great time.